Sports video games are abundant, with new iterations of popular series released yearly in an attempt to cultivate a wider audience. These games are fine for what they are, but they don't exactly catch the eye. They don't have any flair or pizzazz. Instead of playing something bland and uninspiring, I'd much rather sit down and enjoy something colorful and lighthearted. In this most wonderful time of the year, I think a certain wintertime fun fest of crazy tricks and even more insane hang times fits the bill. Let's shred some gnar. SSX Tricky was released in 2001 for the 6th generation of video game consoles. It was published by EA Sports Big, the extreme sports section of the company. You might recognize the intro splash for their games, characterized by the booming voice. EA Sports Big. Before SSX Tricky's release, snowboarding was becoming a more popular sport. In fact, it became an official part of the Winter Olympics in 1998. Capitalizing on this, titles like 1080 Snowboarding and Snowboard Kids 2 followed soon after. These games were fun and provided a solid foundation for the genre going forward. Yet, they lacked either the wackiness or the control necessary to capture a wider audience. There was decent racing and crazy tricks, but nothing quite captured the insanity seen on TV. Then SSX Tricky slid onto the scene a couple of years later and iced out the competition. With a big bag of tricks in its arsenal, it succeeded in being over the top and exciting without relying on its aesthetic choices. There's plenty of style on the surface, yet just as much substance underneath. The introductory cutscene goes from a disco room to ridiculous snowboard antics real quick. Smacking you in the face with cries of excitement and scratches of vinyl, it's as lighthearted as it gets. It's clear what kind of game this is going to be. A tricky one. Being a hyper-stylized snowboarding racing game, vibrant characters are a must if you want to draw people in. Thankfully, SSX Tricky has just about every kind of wacky character imaginable. There's Eddie, who's stuck in the 70s with his goofy red afro and brightly colored clothes. Alright, let's keep it real. Then you've got Sia rocking loads of purple disco clothes to match her spunky attitude. Yo, fly boy. And every character is like this. Distinct appearances and personalities give way to an eclectic cast of oddballs you won't forget. In this way, they're all super memorable, and that's not accounting for a simple trait that not only enhanced the characters, but the experience: voice acting. In the early 2000s, voice acting in video games was becoming more prominent as the capacity to store and load data grew. By the time of the PS2, voice acting was starting to become a standard feature, even if it was less than stellar sometimes. Ugh. Which isn't to say that SSX Tricky has superb voice acting either. Despite having some notable names on the roster, there's little dialogue beyond stuff like, "It's a bird! It's a plane!" and, "Yo, Elise! Yo, watch your back!" But just those bits and pieces add a surprising amount to the game. Just think about how uninteresting the game would be if all you had was the sound of the wind when you jettisoned off of a ramp. Yeah, I mean, come on, that's no good. Instead, your rider displays excitement, with fireworks capping off the moment you explode off the lip of the ramp. The music even shifts, adding to the weightlessness of the situation before erupting back into the main beat. Talking smack before and during the race adds to these characters' styles and personalities. Yo, you won't have no style. Instead of imagining how they'd react, you get to step into the snow boots of these characters. Every time you land a trick, pass someone, and more, they'll give you a quirky quip. They're having a great time, and by proxy, you do too. You wouldn't want to pick up a game this silly and have boring characters. And between the 12 riders available, you're bound to find someone you like. Add in some delicious bumpin' beats and the human beatbox voice of Razel, and you've got plenty of audio and visuals to stimulate the senses. And that's not without talking about the courses. Now, including 2 extra courses you can access in Freeride, there are only 10 courses in the entire game. That might not sound like much, but these courses are lengthy. Even the first track can take you upwards of 3 minutes to complete with the best board available, and they only get longer and more challenging from there. Seeing as they're quite expansive means there's plenty to see on the mountainside. That is, if they were even remotely realistic. Starting with a normal-ish mountain on the first course, it's not long until you're racing through a canyon in a giant facility. While you might sit there thinking, what the hell happened? This strangeness is welcome. With such a ragtag gang of characters to choose from, courses also needed to reflect this zaniness. I mean, when are you going to soar off of giant cliffs and hurtle through an iced-over city? Not in any other snowboarding game of the time, let alone in real life. Eat your heart out, X Games. Each course has a surplus of shortcuts that test your skills further and add replay value via track mastery. Taking you through uncharted territory, they pose a nice risk versus reward scenario. While the challenge goes up by venturing away from the main slope, the payoff is worth it if you make it out the other side unscathed. Tackling the tracks then becomes a battle of not only besting your opponents, but the landscape itself. Taking the standard route will give you an easier time against obstacles, but a harder time staying ahead of the pack. Even on the lowest difficulty, the more demanding tracks will punish you, with the AI relentless at times. You then have to decide on whether you take the risk to get out in front. And some shortcuts will infuriate you. They might even leave you worse off than if you'd stuck to the beaten path. Sometimes they even sit right after the starting line, taunting you mercilessly. You want to go straight? Too bad! Not until you've trained under the shadow of the mystical Garibaldi. Grab your robes, head to Elysium, and meditate next to the silent EA monks. Let the waterfall of Mesa Blanca beat against your back until you reach Nirvana. Only then can you achieve victory. Ha, video games are dumb. Again though, that's the challenge the courses provide with their many routes. And I love them for that. Comical characters and kooky courses are great, but it's about time we talked about how this game plays, because I've mentioned how it's fun a few times and, well, I haven't really elaborated on it. For a game that continually defies the laws of physics with its absurdities, it's interesting that it's so easy to pick up and play. It's as simple as point your board down the mountain, jump off the ramps, and you're ready to kick up a ton of powder. It's quite arcade-like in a sense, which aids it in both being accessible and replayable. But that's not to say there isn't depth in its gameplay either. Sure, what you do on the ground is simple, but once you're in the air, well, that's where things get tricky. Now, I haven't played the Xbox or GameCube versions, but nailing tricks on the PS2 is as easy as can be. All the tricks available to a character are assigned to the 4 shoulder buttons. Since they all fall into such a natural position, it feels intuitive and doesn't distract you from the course in front of you. Understanding that courses would provide a large enough test, tricks are easy to pull off despite them looking anything but. That's not to say you shouldn't try to pull off as many tricks as possible, though. See, as you nail more tricks, you fill up your boost meter, giving you some extra speed when you need it. While this is useful, the amount of boost you have is limited unless you continue to land tricks. So what do? Get tricky, of course. When you max out your boost meter, Rozelle will come blaring over the top telling you that it's time to get tricky. This means you can pull off an uber trick, unique moves that push the extravagance to bonkers levels. Landing an uber trick is tougher to do seeing as you need some big air to make it stick. When you do though, you mark out one letter of the tricky that sits above the meter, fill out the word, and you get unlimited boost. Again, there's a trade-off here. Investing a lot of time into tricks has its benefits, but you could be forging ahead on the racetrack instead of worrying about having a ton of boost in hand. You might look at the first course and think that getting tricky is easy since it's full to the brim with huge jumps. But as the courses get tougher, the opportunities to get maximum boost are more rare and difficult to take advantage of. It's another gamble that adds depth to the game. Although at the end of the day, I just like pulling off insane tricks. I mean, come on, you can't tell me that's not awesome. And really, that's what I want to convey about SSX Tricky. It's silly, excessive, challenging, and thrilling in all the right ways. While the Tony Hawk series was filling my fascination with all things skateboarding, SSX Tricky was the logical leap from the games I'd enjoyed just a couple of years prior. We didn't have long to wait before it got a sequel, SSX 3. While it's also fantastic, it never quite captured my attention like Tricky did. It had the thrills, but it lacked the spirit that keeps me coming back to SSX Tricky all these years later. It's a fantastic experience where gravity is more than defied, it's outright laughed at. Hey guys, I just want to say thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, why not leave it a like, and if you want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. Thanks. Also, this is one part of Boku no Eruption's advent calendar, so if you want to check out more, click that annotation and go check out his video. And don't forget to check in with all the other videos going on this month. There's some other fantastic content creators making some awesome stuff, so yeah, be on the lookout. And yeah, as always, thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it.